The famous movie director Woody Allen once said, 80% of success is just showing up. I initially came across this quote when I was in high school. It was my turn to come up with the quote of the day, and I picked this quote. But I never really understood it. Years later, 2017, I'm watching TV, and I see this skinny guy beat up this huge muscular man who was almost twice his size. Later, I found out that the skinny guy was a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I decided I wanted to learn how to do that. Immediately, I signed up for a course in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, for those of you who might not know what Jiu-Jitsu is, it's basically two people dressing up in pajamas and rolling around on the ground, trying to break each other's bones. It's quite fun, actually. I turned up for my first class, all enthusiastic and pumped up. I'd always done sports in my life, and I thought I would easily take to Jiu-Jitsu. But that first class was a disaster. I had never done yoga in my life, but at that class, I felt I engaged in non-consensual yoga. I had my limbs twisted in ways and at angles that I never thought was possible. The next day, I had muscles that I never knew existed in my body that were aching. All in all, I found out that I was really bad at Jiu-Jitsu. But there was one guy in that class that made me feel better about myself. Let's call him James. James was this very short, plump guy, and it seemed like he had never done a day of sports in his life. This guy was so bad that most of the time you couldn't tell whether he was doing jiu-jitsu or mopping the floor with his body. I remember thinking to myself, man, I'm bad, but this guy is horrible. He has no hope. But funnily, James always had a big smile on his face. He was brimming with enthusiasm, and he seemed completely oblivious to how bad he really was. Regardless, after that first class, I already had second thoughts about this whole jiu-jitsu thing. But I really wanted to learn it. It looked so cool on TV. So I went back home, and I did my research, trying to find tips, techniques, strategies to get good at good jiu-jitsu faster. I did this research for a few days, and I went back to class. I repeated this cycle for a while. And after a couple of months, do you know what changed? Nothing. I was still bad at jiu-jitsu. Ultimately, I got disheartened, and I just stopped going. At the end of the year, I was looking at my goals, and I realized how badly I failed at this goal of trying to learn jiu-jitsu. So I thought I would give it another shot, and I went back to class. I was still as bad, survived most of the class, and then we got to the part where we had to pair up with another person and actually fight to practice the techniques that we had been learning. And I got lucky, because I was paired with good old floor mopping James. I thought to myself, this is great. I'm going to beat this guy. I'm going to get a much needed boost to my self-confidence. The buzzer went off, and we locked horns. We fought for 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, James beat me 6 times. It was humiliating. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, and I decided that I was going to swallow my pride And I walked up to him in the changing room. And I asked him, dude, how the hell did you get so good at jiu-jitsu? James, with his big smile, turned around and said, Demon, that's so nice of you to say that. But you know, when I started jiu-jitsu at the beginning of the year, my only goal was to come to class regularly. Because I have this weight problem I've been working on. And I thought it would help me lose some weight. And I'm really happy because this year I managed to attend more than 250 classes. I was stumped. I went back home, tried to do the math, trying to figure out how many classes I had been to. The answer was a mere 23 classes. At that point, I remembered Woody Allen's quote, 80% of success is just showing up. I realized that while I had been focusing on the 20% with all my research on tips, techniques, strategies, and then feeling disheartened that I didn't see any improvement in a couple of months, James had been focusing on the 80%. James had been just showing up. This incident left a big impact on my life. In 2021, I decided that I would finally face my debilitating fear of public speaking. And I joined Toastmasters, where you get to practice speaking in front of an audience. And for that entire first year, I had only one goal, to just show up to the meetings regularly and get on stage as much as possible and practice. Because I realized that 80% of success is indeed just showing up.